I'm excited about today's video, which is about one of the most famous TV outlets, news TV outlets called Al Jazeera, which has its Arabic branch, the international branch. It has AG+, it has sports, it has movies, dramas. It's a very big outlet, let's say, and it's a very influential one. But I want to tell you my personal experience with, or my story with Al Jazeera, which I really tried hard when I was writing the notes to be fair and objective with Al Jazeera. And I don't want this to be a black and white thing, but it's pretty dark. So brace yourself. So Al Jazeera launched in 1996 when BBC Arabic was closed due to some restrictions imposed by Saudi Arabia. And back then, the Emir of Qatar, he supported the project of Al Jazeera with tens of millions of dollars from the revenues of its gas revenues. And they established Al Jazeera, and a lot of journalists who were working with BBC Arabic, they joined Al Jazeera. So there is this theory that the early founders of Al Jazeera Arabic were the BBC journalists. So they tried to copy the experience of the BBC and brought it to Al Jazeera. And don't get me wrong, of course, the BBC Arabic has some brilliant journalists, some professional journalists, and even if they are not professional in an objective way, but they are professional in what they do or in what they are tasked for, right? But what Al Jazeera did in 1996 is they started to broadcast a lot of news coming from the Middle East and also from the international news. And this was something new for the Arabic audience because most of the Arabic countries have their local news channels and they just follow or they just hear with whom their president met today and what did they address, and that's it. And maybe some very minor local issues. But Jazeera came and with international news, and they started to talk about very critical issues such as Palestine, such as Afghanistan, Lebanon, Syria, Gulf countries, USA against Russia, China against USA, and it was like people started to learn from Al Jazeera. And I'm being very honest with you, I have learned a lot from Al Jazeera. In 1996, I was 9 years old. But if you ask my parents about me when I was 9, I used to sit in front of Al Jazeera. From 9 till 18, 20 years old, I was addicted to Al Jazeera because I was addicted to the developments. I want to know what's happening around the world, and Al Jazeera brought to us this news from all around the world with some, of course, bias that satisfied us, at least in the Middle East, especially that it was pro-Palestine, pro-Syria, pro-resistance, and it was against American interventionism here and there, despite the fact that the leadership of Qatar had a very good relations with the United States, especially during the invasion of Iraq. This coverage, let's say good coverage of Al Jazeera continued till 2006 and 2008, especially during the wars against Lebanon in 2006 and against Gaza in 2008. So I'm asking myself now, were it not for Al Jazeera, was it possible that I would be involved in politics? I think the easy answer is no. It was Al Jazeera that made me active on a political level. And most of the people in the Middle East and North Africa, those who were passive in politics, they became active mostly thanks to Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera has hundreds of millions of followers around the world, and they watch from all around the world. But this excitement and objectivity, or objectivity according to our standards, right, has changed. Especially in 2011, after the so-called Arab Spring, erupted, and Al Jazeera became a weapon. As simple as it is. The rulers of Qatar weaponized Al Jazeera against the ruling governments who they don't like. Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, Syria. When I say weaponized, I'm not only talking about something minimal, I'm talking about something very influential. People in the West do not understand how influential is Al Jazeera because of its big reach and because of its very professional tools, very professional journalists with great experience, and the way they deliver the information in your subconscious, the way they provoke your emotions, the way they urge you to use violence without even telling you to use violence. They're very, very professional in this. And believe it or not, the last time I watched Al Jazeera was in 2012. Since then, I boycott Al Jazeera. This love affair with Al Jazeera has become at least a hate affair from two sides, by the way, and I will mention you why also they hate me. In 2011, the strategy of Al Jazeera during the Arab Spring had two pillars. The first pillar is Islamism, and especially Salafism and the Muslim Brotherhood. And this pillar was mostly preached and promoted by a very influential Egyptian cleric. His name is Yusuf al-Qaradawi, and he had his own program on Al Jazeera, and he used to preach hate. He used to preach terrorism. He used to preach violence. He used to preach discrimination. He used to preach any sort of inhuman behavior that you can ever imagine in your life. One of the fatwas that Yusuf al-Qaradawi told his audience on Al Jazeera, that the so-called rebels in Syria are legally allowed, and when I say legally, according to the Sharia laws, which is completely wrong interpretation from him. He said it is fine to murder civilians and soldiers working for the government of Syria, which means anyone who works, let's say, for Air Syria, for the Ministry of Electricity, who is a teacher in a school, in a public school. Everyone, he said, you can murder anyone and everyone, and those who work with the government. And he said if somebody was innocent, then God will make him he will receive justice from God later. This is how much ugly is Yusuf al-Qaradawi. Thanks to this fatwa, tens of thousands of civilians died. He also made a fatwa to murder Gaddafi. What happened to Libya now? It's an open-air slave market. And Al Jazeera, they don't talk about Libya's problems anymore. They just destroyed the country. And now in 2021, thanks to Blast platform, they posted secret documents, Qatari documents of the talks held between the former Emir of Qatar, Hamad bin Jassim, with Bernard-Henri Lévy, the French philosopher, the Zionist philosopher. And how did they schedule the war on Syria? How did they plan to murder President Assad? How did they plan to conquer the big cities, especially Aleppo and Damascus? And how did they plan to support the radical jihadists, including the multinational ones, who later established ISIS and al-Nusra? I will do a separate video about that with an expert about this issue, because it's very important, and I think it changes the narrative of the Syrian war forever. So this is the first pillar which is Islamism and especially the Muslim Brotherhood. And the second one, there is another figure. His name is Azmi Bshara. Azmi Bshara is a Palestinian Israeli former lawmaker. He was part of the Knesset, and he suddenly became a philosopher and a preacher of democracy and human rights. So while he was trying to attract the people who are thirsty for democracy and human rights in the Middle East, and especially those on the left and the liberals, and he was attracting them to the Qatari model of the Arab Spring and trying to even give them jobs, because Azmi Bshara has multiple media outlets and newspapers, and he hired many of these left-wing and liberal journalists to work for him. And while he was trying to promote the Qatari model of the Arab Spring for human rights and democracy, on the other side, Al Jazeera is literally, through the media outlet and through Qatar, are supporting the Islamists and the Muslim Brotherhood to reach power. So Al Jazeera didn't only weaponize its media against the former regimes, it has used religion aggressively and weaponized it. At the same time, they also attracted the left wing and the liberals and weaponized them again against the former regimes, well knowing that the forces who are fighting against these regimes are the Islamists. So they just use these left wing and the liberals as a decoration during this Arab Spring to tell the people, look, people are really pretty liberal. They're just looking for democracy and human rights. Come on, there are no Islamists, where the actual fighting underground is conducted by the Islamists. This is pretty clear for anyone who knows anything about the Middle East. So Al Jazeera normalized terrorism, normalized ISIS, normalized al-Nusra. How? As I mentioned, one, through fatwas, and two, through, for example, ISIS, in Arabic we call them Daesh. Al Jazeera never uses the term Daesh. They say al-Dawla al-Islamiyya, which means the Islamic State. The usage of this terminology is not a coincidence. When you repeat it to the audience and say it's an Islamic State, Islamic State, Islamic State, it saves in his or her subconscious, so thinking that there is Islamic State. There is no Islamic State. There is no state. The Daesh, ISIS, calls itself Islamic State, but there was no state there. It was a gangster. It was a gang. It was anything but a state, right? But when you promote ISIS as some sort of a state, an alternative to the current state in Syria, then you are giving legitimacy and normalizing ISIS. And until this moment, you call al-Nusra, which is the branch of Al-Qaeda in Syria, by rebels. These are facts. These are facts that Al Jazeera did in the past decade. It's very unfortunate. Why would I have a hostile position from Al Jazeera? This is it. In 2014, a journalist from Al Jazeera contacted me, Al Jazeera English International, and she asked me to write an article about the invasion of the rebels against Kessab. Kessab is an Armenian town in Syria. And she contacted me on this purpose because I'm Syrian of Armenian origins. And I know the situation there, and I was like, do you know my position on the Syrian war? She was like, yes, of course. We know you, and in Jazeera we have tolerance towards all opinions. It's our logo in Al Jazeera that the opinion and the opposite opinion. So of course we're very open. And I wrote an article in 12 hours, and I will post the link in the description below. You can read it. It was about this invasion, and I wrote it in a very objective way. It's you can read it. You can judge by yourself. So she told me that they would pay $250 in 2014 for an article. $250, man. That means if I write like one article per month, it's like $1,000 per month. It's a good money, huh? But I wrote that article, I sent it to her, and I waited the second day. I didn't receive an answer. I sent her an email. She didn't reply. 48 hours, I sent her another email, and then she called me. She called me and she said the editorial team were very upset that I accepted to publish your article, and that they want to make some changes. And this is the changes that they propose. And when I took a look to the article that I wrote personally, and they edited it, changed it a little bit, it was completely different article. It wasn't me who wrote that. And I was like, I'm not gonna put my signature on that article, dude. I'm not a sellout person. Sorry. If you $250, I don't care. This is my country, period. And she was like, I tried to publish. She's a nice lady, to be fair. She's a nice lady. She tried to help me. She wanted to publish my article. She said, I would find you another platform to publish, I promise. And I said, no, just give me back my article and I know how to publish it. I wrote a Facebook post about this experience and what happened with me. And in a few hours, she called me again, begging me to delete the post because her boss threatened her to fire her from Al Jazeera because of my post on Facebook. So I took down that post just in respect for her. Yeah, opinion on the other side of the other opinion. They were gonna kick out their employee because of me. In 2020, actually in 2019 and 2020, there was a big media campaign against me by many media outlets, mostly pro-terrorists in Syria. They funded either by Qatar or Turkey, and they really tried to grill me. And they were calling me all sorts of names. Assad's right hand in Europe. He's a radical right-wing person. He's a neo-Nazi. Like, just, you can't even imagine what they were talking about. And one of the accusations was like, he's a spy working for Assad in Germany. This is a serious allegation, man. And I sued a few people here in Germany, those who made such claims, and they paid fines to the government. And Al Jazeera took these voices and they prepared an investigation in 2020. The title of the investigation is In Search for Assad's Assassins in Europe. It's an Arabic investigation. My information says this investigation was prepared by an Arabic and a regional two intelligence agencies, and they submitted this investigation, between brackets of course, to Al Jazeera for them to create a visual documentary from this investigation. And in this investigation, they're talking about some former military officers or former intelligence officers from the Syrian side who fled to Germany as refugees. And some of the other refugees, they say that these officers, they were torturing them, and they committed human rights abuses. This is the claim, and they talking about these people, and and among these people, they talk like 3-4 minutes about me. I'm not a Syrian official, not former, not current. I wasn't in any military or any security jobs. I didn't serve the army. I wasn't a fighter. I'm just a civilian. I was a journalist. And they talk about me. They give the impression that I'm the most evil Syrian ever in Germany. And then they try to connect me with right-wing groups, because I have friends from right-wing groups, whether in the United States or in Europe. And of course, I have also friends from left-wing groups. They don't show you pictures of me with left-wing friends, for example. I have friends from all. I don't care if they are right or left. It's just irrelevant and so stupid to filter your friends based on their right or left. I don't fucking care. If you're human, you're human. And they said they brought people in this investigation. They blur their faces, and these people claim that I'm a spy working for Assad in Germany. And they don't even show their faces, and you can't even sue Al Jazeera because they say it's not us. It's him, and we are protecting this personality. It's blurred faced. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's crazy to claim that a person like me is a spy. Like, I'm like a public, like I'm an outspoken person. I'm online already. I'm talking about all sorts of shit, and you know me for a long time now. A spy, at least, would be an undercover, like he's doing something without really being so famous, right? At least this is like a 101. How much ridiculous should someone be to think that I'm a spy? And because of this investigation, by the way, the second day, I went to the police station and I told them, hi, they know me well because of the previous attacks against me. Yesterday, Al Jazeera claimed that I'm a spy for Assad, and I'm coming here for you with my own legs, and if there is anything against me, take me to custody. And they really laughed, and they were like, the Herr Almassian is like Mr. Almassian, go home. But the police didn't do anything with me because like there is nothing, but I know, and I have an information that another agency responsible for the domestic security in Germany, they opened an investigation and they investigated me, and they probably spied on me. They taped my mobile. I don't know. It's a possibility, but I'm sure 100% that they opened an investigation, which of course led to nothing because there is nothing and I have nothing to hide. But just see what Al Jazeera did to me because of their stupid and ridiculous accusation that they tried to promote. Now, we are in 2021, and the journalist from Al Jazeera International, she contacted me on Twitter, and she asked me to send her a 40 seconds video of my opinion about Al Jazeera project since it's the 25th anniversary of Al Jazeera. It's so hilarious. I'm like, I quoted her tweet and I was like, so last year Al Jazeera said that I'm a spy for Assad and I'm like working as an undercover agent for Assad in Germany according to an investigation published on Al Jazeera, and due to that I had a lot of troubles. So do you still want my opinion about Al Jazeera? If you want, let me know. I mean, it's so surreal, man. The audacity of asking me my opinion about Al Jazeera. After all this, they played an instrumental role in destroying my country. our memories, our infrastructure. They participated in murdering our friends, relatives. They participated in displacing hundreds of thousands of people. They normalized terrorism. They destroyed every beautiful aspect of our lives, our memories. It's very emotional. Maybe you don't understand it, but as someone who comes from Syria or was born in Syria, it was very emotional. There were days that I used to cry because of what happened in Syria. And until this moment, I cannot forgive. I will never forgive them for what they did to us. In politics, we may one day deal with these former enemies, but deep inside, I would never ever forgive for what they have done to us. And if you guys in Al Jazeera now want my opinion, this is a 28 minutes video of my opinion. It's not the 40 seconds. If I sent you a 40 seconds video, you would either cut it into 2 or 3 seconds, or you would never publish it. If you want my opinion, this is it. And if you want my opinion again, I would do it live, not recording. And I'm sure you would never host me live, because you know what would happen if you host me live. I've been your host, Kevork Almassian of Syriana Analysis. I apologize that this video is a little bit long, but I think it's very important for you to understand what is Al Jazeera and how Al Jazeera is weaponized against the people of the region, and how did Al Jazeera play a very destructive role in Middle East and North Africa. If you like this video, please subscribe and hit the like button. And if you want to support an independent journalist like me, who doesn't write articles for $250 for Al Jazeera, you can become a patron. Link in the description below. You can pay only $2 per month for me. Also, it's a very big support. You can't imagine how much important is that for me. And it makes me survive and continue and bring to you more content like this. See you next time.
سؤال سئل من أكثر من مشاهد، ننقل صيغة الأخ عبد الغني، يقول: هل يجوز استهداف من يؤيد النظام السوري كما يقول القاتل وعلى رأسهم علماء السلطة؟ وهل يجوز قتل عامة العسكريين الذين ما زالوا واقفين مع النظام، مع العلم أن فيهم من ينوي الانشقاق ولا يتمكن من ذلك؟
مش عرفنا، من أين أعلم؟ أنا الذين يعملون مع السلطة يجب أن نقاتلهم جميعا، عسكريين، مدنيين، علماء، جاهلين. اللي يكون مع هذه السلطة الظالمة الجائرة المتدبرة في الأرض التي قتلت الناس بغير حق هو ظالم مثلها، يأخذ ما حكمها. فكل من يعني يقاتل عليه أن يقاتل هؤلاء. إذا كان في واحد مظلوم، الله سبحانه وتعالى سيدافع عنه وسيأخذ حقه. واتقوا فتنة لا تصيبن الذين ظلموا منكم خاصة كما يقول القرآن.